Dave's talk about films, fashion and firsts.
Hello, my name is David K. Jones, but everybody calls me Dave. I'm the bass player with Mama Genesis Tribute Band, and amongst others, I play bass for a group called the Mousetrap Factory, and we've got an album coming out in May, and it's called The Beauty of Routine, not to be missed.
Hello, my name's David Broom. I'm a road manager with Mama Genesis Tribute Band, and they also call me Dave, amongst other things.
Hello, my name is David Heaton, but everyone calls me Dave, Dr. Dave. I'm the lighting engineer with Mama Genesis Tribute Band. Away from the music, I love sports and Bolton Wanderers Football Club. Yes.
Thanks. Before we get going on this second podcast, I'd like to say a big thank you to all those people who, first of all, listened to the first one and sent us some messages on Facebook, especially to Faye. Thank you, Faye. Thanks especially for your ideas. In our next podcast, we will actually be mentioning some of the television programs you suggested. And also to Stacey. Apparently we made her very hungry when we were talking about food. We'll try to avoid doing that in the future. Today's podcast is about films, it's about fashion, and it's about firsts. So I'll kick things off by talking about films. I do know that when I was young, my mum took me to see some really interesting films. The Jungle Book, I could sing all the songs, right? The Aristocats, I could sing all the songs. Pinocchio and Bambi. They definitely were four that my mum took me to see. But the first one that I actually went of my own accord was 2001 A Space Odyssey, which came out in 1968. But in those days, a film would come out and then about 2 years later, it would return to your town so you could watch it again. So I saw it in 1970. Now, in 1970, I was, deep breath, 14. And when I was 14, I therefore qualified to see this film because this film was rated A. In the past, films were not rated in the way they are now. They were rated then U, A, AA, and X. U meant anybody could go. A meant you had to be 14. AA meant you had to be probably definitely over 14 because there were some naughty bits in it. And X meant you had to be more than 18. All that's changed now because now it's U, PG, 15 and 18. However, I do remember sitting in the cinema watching 2001 A Space Odyssey, the first film I went to see of my own volition, thinking how spellbinding it was and what on earth did the ending mean.
One of my very first films was the Sound of Music. I remember it well. I was 11 years old at the time, and we were on holiday in Newquay, Cornwall, and the weather was so bad we couldn't go to the beach, and I was dragged screaming and kicking to see what I thought was going to be a long, boring film. Actually, it wasn't too bad. And when we came out after the film, the sun was shining, so it was back on the beach again and back to some normality. Other films I can remember are Spartacus, an epic historical drama directed by Stanley Kubrick. Also The Ten Commandments, which is self-explanatory, and a film about Thomas à Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was actually murdered in the Abbey steps.
For me, my earliest memories is I used to live in a place called West Orton, and actually in West Orton it was Wingate, and I'm actually an official care-yed. Now, for those that don't know, you can look it up and see what it means. If not, maybe I'll tell you next time. But it was a one-horse town and we had no cinema or anything like that. It wasn't till the age of 11 that we moved to Bolton, and we actually had an Odeon. And I remember going as an 11-year-old to Saturday morning at the cinema and seeing lots of adventuresome films, lots of public information films, lots of cartoons, and basically what happened is they would play one film but split it up, and they would leave you on a cliffhanger so that it drew you back the following Saturday. And when it was such a letdown, because usually it wasn't a cliffhanger and they could have just carried on and got through that. But I know that Phil Collins starred in one, I believe, called Calamity the Cow, that was a Children's Film Foundation film. Phil, when he first started off as a young actor, come musician later, but he starred in quite a few early ones like that. Also did some knitting patterns, I believe, that you can get hold of. Yeah, the great Phil Collins. But yeah, starred in Calamity the Cow, an absolute classic. I can't remember the second one that he did, but I know he did, and I believe he was somewhere in the kids of Hook, Peter Pan, and might have been somewhere at one point in the lads in Oliver. But I'm not sure. I saw it the other day and I was looking for him, but I couldn't see him. So whether he got cut out of that, I don't know. But Saturday mornings, I'm sure for all those of our age, will remember going there, take you with your friends, and you'd be looking. Remember what happened last week, and you get there and you say, oh, well, that weren't really. But then they'd give you another one to hook you in again, and it's like the hook line, the chorus of a song that gets you. That's the bit you remember, and you used to go back. So that was my Saturday mornings and remembrances of films.
Did you used to run up the street after the film, pretending to be a cowboy, slapping your thigh?
Yeah.
Just imagine you doing that.
Yeah, but you had to be careful because you came out onto a main street, so you couldn't be too much slappy thigh.
Yeah, remember the Green Cross Code?
Yes, I can remember Saturday morning pictures. In particular, the serials they had from the 1930s. Flash Gordon sticks in mind because it had the credits. It had the starting introduction, that went up, rolled up across the screen, and it started with like chapter 1 or chapter 2, whatever the episode was, and then it faded into the distance, which was nicked wholesale by George Lucas for Star Wars. He borrowed that because Star Wars has the same sort of introduction. They were in the 1930s Flash Gordon films. I also remember that it had a song, which I'm not going to sing, but I think I can remember the words, which are, "We are the boys and girls well known as miners of the ABC, and every Saturday we line up to see the films we like and shout aloud with glee." I know that's the first 4 lines because it's sort of burnt into my memory from watching it. And also, if you've got Sky TV, the other providers are available, by the way. If you've got Sky TV and you can turn to Talking Pictures, which is right at the end of the cinemas, all the film shows, and Talking Pictures shows really old films. But every Saturday morning they show Saturday morning pictures. So if you want to reminisce about Saturday morning pictures, then you need to go to Talking Pictures every Saturday at 9 o'clock.
The other thing, as we're talking films, then, if you'll excuse me, Dave, is the amount of cinemas there were back in there.
Yeah.
You'd have the Odeon, the Lido, the ABC, the Gaumont, and I'm sure you can name other places. Today you've got Cineworld or View mainly, and they're the 2 multiplexes that you go to, but they had odd little cinemas, and today they've either been lost or changed to bingo halls or even knocked down or changed to other things. But there were so many different film places that competed for your business.
I can remember the Empire in Widnes. That was a big one. That's now a car park. The Plaza at the top end of Widnes, it was quite a big cinema as well. And my mother used to work as an usherette there before she went working for ICI. And that is now a big medical complex for doctor surgeries.
Right.
So we have got a cinema now. We've got one at the Hive, which is one of these multi-cinema things. Which each cinema probably holds about 100 people or something like that. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's not the same as going in the big room, you know.
No, it's definitely totally different experience going seeing a film now compared to going when we went back. Remember the velour seats that you would sit in? None of these leather recliners and places to put your popcorn. You always had to find somewhere to put your stuff down and cramped in.
Yeah, there was also adverts by Pearl and Dean.
Yeah.
And Pearl and Dean used to have. There was always, if you went to see a main film, like when I went to see 2001: A Space Odyssey, there was something on before it which I've completely blotted out of my memory, and then there were adverts by Pearl and Dean. Real bad adverts, where people who didn't really know how to advertise what they were advertising would come on and go, "Hello, my name is John, and I sell fish. If you'd like to buy fish, come to my shop in the high street," etc. And so I've burnt into my mind is all those terrible Pearl and Dean adverts. Anyway, to finish off this little section, we're just going to go around and say what's our favourite film of all time, which is really difficult to do. But after a lot of thinking about it, I've decided that mine is a film called Blade Runner, which starred Harrison Ford. I've always loved that film. I've seen it countless times. I just love Blade Runner. I don't know why. Probably because I read the book by Philip K. Dick, which is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is a sort of play on words. Do robots think about electric sheep robots? The book is a bit deep, but the film itself was absolutely brilliant, and I love it.
Well, that's a tough one for me, but I would have to say Quadrophenia would be my best. For the music, not so much, the acting wasn't that brilliant, but the music was fantastic in it.
I love Harrison Ford, who's in Blade Runner. So you would maybe think one of the Indiana Jones or whatever, but it's not. I'm going to go back to, I think it was 75 and Jaws, and the effect that had on people, how just John Williams is how that could evoke so many memories for you, and as soon as you hear it you're thinking, where's the shark? But it was just so compelling how you never actually saw it till near the end. And being from West Horton, then Robert Shaw was in that film.
There's a few sharks in West Horton, Dave.
So one of our own was in that film, played Captain, who got ate by the shark eventually. But great film.
I always remember the head falling from underwater out of the bottom of the boat.
Yeah.
That give me the creeps.
Okay, we're going to move on, and we will now move on to fashion. Now, obviously, the three of us are fashionistas in what we wear. As you'll know, if you come to a Mama gig, you'll know how exotic our clothes are. Not. However, I'm going to tell you about my trench coat. Now, I got a World War II trench coat in 1975, 6-ish, something like that. It was the first actual thing I bought for myself, because up until that point my mum and my dad had said, yeah, here's a new shirt or whatever it might be, and the only thing I ever bought for myself was, Mum, can I have some jeans? Well, I went out and I know I bought the trench coat, and I know that I bought it from an Army and Navy stores in town, and from that point onwards I more or less lived in that trench coat. Even when the weather was lovely, I would be wearing my trench coat. However, my trench coat died when I went to see Genesis. I went to see Genesis at Milton Keynes, 6 of the best, when they all got back together. And from the minute we got there until the minute we left, it rained. And we were in the middle of this big crowd, so we couldn't move, because if you moved, you're never going to find each other again. So by the end of the day, the coat was, let's just say, a little bit wet. And when I got home that night, I took it off, and it just stood in the corner of the room of its own accord. It had died. And I loved that trench coat. But unfortunately, that was its last outing. The day I saw Genesis was its last outing.
Very similar thing to, well, it's not exactly a trench coat, but the craze when I was younger was long leather coats. So I was fascinated with one of these in the shop window in Alexandra's in town. So off he goes with his money into the shopping with thinking I want to buy this fantastic leather coat. When he gets in there and starts to feel around this coat to see what the quality was like, and it was like a plastic. It wasn't actually leather, but I thought to myself, I'm going to have it anyway. Anyway, I get this coat home, and I'm about to go out for the night with my mate, and my dad says to me, "You're not going out in that. It's like a flashing Mac." So, but I went out, and yeah, it was a bit like a flashing Mac, but you never know. Other things that I remember from fashion, Ben Sherman shirts, good quality shirts, bit overpriced. Now I tend to go to George in Asda.
From Ben to George.
From Ben to George. You can get a shirt for £12.50 in Asda. Cheesecloth shirts, tops.
I remember them well.
And they were like modern rockers.
There's a couple of other things that tie-dyed shirts.
That's where you throw the ink in the thing. And
that's where you throw the ink and the paraffin, whatever, into the bowl and let your
fire to it.
No, you don't set fire to it. You let the inks go into the t-shirt and then hang it up.
Psychedelic.
That's the effect it has on you without taking the pills.
All right.
Some of the other things that I did as well, actual putting stuff onto me.
You've done a lot of things in your past, haven't you?
No, I've not. I've not done as much as you two have, but I just go to the other extremes, basically.
An adrenaline junkie.
About 13 years of age, the world opening up to me. My oyster had been shut until this point. Got into music, and at the time I was with my pocket money that I got, I collected singles, and whatever was in the charts, that's what I would buy. But then one of the first boy bands were the Bay City Rollers, and they came out with this craze whereby they wore something like 3/4 leggings Birmingham bags, which they adorned with tartan down the sides, a shirt with a tartan collar, and the scarf wrapped around your hand. Well, me and some of my mates decided that looked cool, and we had a go at that. And somewhere in my dim and distant past, I know pictures were taken, and
we have to see these photographs.
I will scour the internet.
We have to see these
They
photographs.
will definitely not be on the internet. They will be somewhere within my collections somewhere. If I can dig them out, I will promise you. I also had hair that went down to my shoulders, which is totally different to how I am now. But that was one of the things prior to my eyes being open to the music of Genesis and others. But at that young age, whatever was in the charts, I was influenced by, and so that's what I took my cue from. It wasn't till about 76, 77 that I changed and heard the music of Genesis, and then everything that I collected pop-wise went out the window, and I then had to have the Wrangler jacket so that I could get the patches to stick on, so that when you'd see the group or whatever, you'd get a patch or a badge, and it showed who you'd seen. Or
there's a guy who comes to Mama gigs and he has loads of them on his jacket.
He has.
I can't remember his name.
And I
apologise to him now.
Yes, I apologise because it's gone. Is it Graham?
Graham, if it's you, we like your jacket.
Yeah, absolutely love your jacket.
No, I think one of the things I know I had was I got my mum to put a slit up the side of my Wrangler jeans from the ankle all the way up to almost the knee, and she'd put an extra bit in to make them even wider than they were. Now I want you to know that I had bought fleurs, and Mum put an extra triangle in of material so that they were even wider. Absolutely. And I also had platform shoes. I can remember having platform shoes and not being able to walk for about at least a week until I got used to them. And I probably lived in those platform shoes for a while, and then realised that I looked an idiot and stopped wearing them.
I hold my hand up. I had platform shoes as well, so already being tall and not really needing them, putting 4-inch platform shoes on made me look like a big giraffe.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to go down that road, Dave. While I was at school, at the school I was at, you couldn't have long hair. But I did have long hair. It was tucked into my collar down my back, so you couldn't see it. And I think from 1974 to 1979, I didn't have a haircut. And by the end, it was halfway down my back. I know that. My hair was exceptionally long, really, really long, almost dragging on my waist down the back. And then I was training to be a teacher. What a mad decision that was. After the first session of teaching practice, my tutor, who I have to say was very posh, he said, "Oh, David, you're quite good at this teaching lark." That's the way he talked. "David, you're quite good at this teaching lark. But I have to tell you honestly that you have to have your haircut if you want to get on. You could be the hippie teacher that everybody loves but is never promoted. Or you could have your haircut and you might actually make a career out of this." Anyway, I went and had my haircut. And I remember walking into the hairdressers in town and my hair was almost down to my waist. And when I walked out, it was almost down to my shirt collar. And I was almost in tears. Right, we're going to move on to our third topic, which is firsts. So I'm going to start the ball rolling with the first gig I ever went to. Because there's an interesting story about that one too. And I swear to you now that this is a true story. When I was, let me think, 1971. How old am I in 1971, lads? 14, 15, something like that. And I go to my first concert, which is Black Sabbath. And it's Black Sabbath at the stadium in Liverpool. I don't think the stadium's there anymore in Liverpool.
Don't think so.
Yeah. Anyway, well, the first thing you noticed when you walked in was the haze, which was made up of interesting cigarette smoke. I think that's the best word to describe it. And the unusual aroma, which was knockout in more ways than one. The support band were a group called Badger. Now, you're thinking, never heard of them, and you probably haven't. But the keyboard player was Tony Kaye, who had been in Yes, and I loved Yes. So watching Tony Kaye play was really exciting for me. Then Black Sabbath come on, really loud, really energetic, loved it, blew my mind, thought this is it, I've got to be a musician. Waited outside back and got the autograph of the bass player, Geezer Butler. Unfortunately, I didn't have any paper. So I improvised and I gave him the biro and he wrote Geezer Butler on my left hand, in the palm of my left hand. I swear that is the truth. So I came home and I said to my mum, I really don't want to wash this off because, you know, it's his autograph. It's the only way I've got it. Can we hang on till tomorrow and I'll get a film in the camera and we'll take a picture of the film in the camera? And she said, no, don't be ridiculous. So basically my mum made me wash my hands. But this is the true story part. I saved the water. The water that I washed my hands in, I actually saved the water and put it in a little plastic container and said to me, I'm keeping that water because that's the water that's got the ink in that he said. And she said, okay, you can keep it, yeah. So I went to bed, got up next morning, it was empty. Mum had just poured it away. She said, you're not keeping that, it's rubbish. And I never forgave her for a long, long time. I was heartbroken. How stupid was I when I was 14? Goodness me. But my first concert was Black Sabbath and Badger, and it was a blinder.
Yeah, my first concert was Gentle Giant at the Queen's Hall in Widnes for 50 pence. And a friend of mine was a friend of a friend of a friend who actually did the promotion for it, and we all got dragged along there, and it was different. I'd never seen anything quite like Gentle Giant before in my life, and the music was very, it would possibly call it jazz rock, but you know, it certainly opened your eyes up to what various types of music. And the concert after that was Emerson, Lake and Palmer at the Top Rank Suite in Liverpool, and that was £1. I think it was 1972. I was very disappointed because we had to sit on the floor, but for £1 you can't grumble really, can you? You know what I mean? And they had this enormous Tarkus tank. If you know what Tarkus is, or don't know what Tarkus is, it's like an armadillo in the form of a tank, and it was up on the balcony, firing smoke and sparks all over the audience. And Keith Emerson was throwing his organ around the stage.
Okay. Sorry, folks, but nothing as beautiful as those two gentlemen have just seen. My first gig that I ever saw, I was something like about 16 or 17, probably 16. I'd gone away to the Isle of Man. Beautiful.
Never been.
Isle of Man. Back in the day when I'd gone there, that were like far, far, far away. It's like Dave said, in a distant galaxy, far, far away. Isle of Man, and unfortunately it was, not for them, but it was Showaddywaddy. That was my introduction to live gigs.
Did you have the uniform, Dave?
I didn't have the winkle pickers or the beetle crushers and the suede coats and the drapes and all like that. No, I actually think we'd gone in to get out of the rain. All I can remember is we went on holiday.
Excuse.
We went. I think you went there for Sound of Music, didn't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, went for a nice relaxing holiday, and I can remember for most of the week it rained, and we actually went into this venue. It wasn't even a concert hall venue. It was some kind of amusement place that backed onto this. I don't know. I can't even describe it. But they had the live music on, and we said, why not? At least we're dry. We went in, and Showaddywaddy came on, and being at that time where I was into the pop music, I have to say I quite enjoyed it. These days, if it was a Showaddywaddy concert, I wouldn't be going anywhere near it. For my first proper, that I call concert, would have been Genesis at the Free Trade Hall in Manchester. That's something that you two probably had the advantage over me. In Bolton and West Orton prior to that, we had no music. You had to travel. I'm sure you in Liverpool and had far more egress to places that we had. And it's like I say, never actually got to see any proper concerts.
You could go into Liverpool every weekend and see a decent band. There are plenty of music venues in Liverpool. Stadium, the Empire Theatre, the Playhouse, even small pubs, Moonstone, Penny Farthing, they all had decent bands on. It was a very busy music scene in Liverpool. There was the likes of Eric's as well. Upstairs at Eric's.
I have to say that I had seen a band before I saw Black Sabbath, but I don't count it because my mum and my dad made me go because it was for my entertainment, but I think they went because they wanted to go, and it was the Sooty Braden Show Band. We went to see Sooty at the theatre, and I sat through Sooty, and that was my first real gig when I was about 6. But the one that I went to first of my own volition was, as I said, Black Sabbath. And I'm sure that after I saw Black Sabbath, a month later I was back at the stadium and I saw Status Quo.
That makes me feel so much better knowing that you went watching Sooty.
There's nothing wrong with Sooty.
I've got a confession to make as well. I've actually seen Tom Jones live. We took my mother and my mother's birthday. We were on holiday in Bournemouth, and my mum's birthday while we were there, and Tom Jones was playing in the local theatre in the town, and we took her to see Tom Jones live, and the supporting act with him was Roy Castle. Very, very talented musician, that fella.
Very.
Can play anything.
Right, well, should we move on? My first record that I bought was a single, and it was called Something's Burning by Kenny Rogers and the First Edition. I remember it well. And I can tell you that the first album I bought was Bridge Over Troubled Waters by Simon and Garfunkel. It came out in 1969, I think, and I think I bought it in 1970. And there had been music in the house before that time. My dad had lots of albums. Mantovani, Herb Albert, Burt Camford, Jim Reeves. So you can see where this was going. It was like Talking Heads said, we're on a road to nowhere. So instead, I went out and bought Bridge Over Troubled Waters, and then the next album I bought was a compilation album. It was called The Age of Atlantic. I can tell you it cost £1. And in those days, record labels would release compilation albums where there's about 10 tracks and every track was from somebody different. So you would find out new bands by buying compilation albums. And I remember buying this one because the cover was made from, it looked like a picture of plasticine models, all of which were the names of the bands that were on the actual record. And that is the first time I heard Led Zeppelin. It was Communication Breakdown, I think, and I heard Led Zeppelin on that album.
My first album is Fleetwood Mac's Greatest Hits, when they were a blues band, before Christine McVie joined the band, and before Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham joined the band. And my first single was Ringo Starr's It Don't Come Easy, and they were played on the Fidelity Music Master stereo system, and they used to have on a shelf in the front room, speakers up on the wall, and when my parents went out, the volume was turned up rather loud.
My first, like I said, when I was young, I was collected singles. I think my very first one that I got was Slade, and I do believe it was Come On Feel the Noise. And similar to yourself, Dave, the first album that I probably bought would have been a compilation, a Top of the Pops or a Now whatever. I think we had different artists, not always the real artists that were on the albums, but impersonators that simulated the songs that we'd heard.
MFP, Music for Pleasure.
MFP, Music for Pleasure. Some people, collect Top of the Pops albums. There are people out there trying to get all the Top of the Pops albums. And the reason they do that is because some of them featured people who are now famous. So some of the early albums from the 70s, the piano playing and some of the singing is Elton John. He is actually impersonating somebody else on the album, playing the song. Let's just say the covers were interesting. Let's put it that way.
I was just going to say, it's nothing to do with the scantily clad ladies on the front that you was going to collect them for.
Okay, moving on. My first holiday was going to Rhyl with my mum and dad. I know that they took me to Rhyl. And on that holiday is the first time that I ever rode a horse. Not that I ride a horse very often, but I've ridden it a few times. I've been on a horseback. But on that one, I remember it well because I'm on this horse and I'm being walked round, and it's a thunderstorm, and that's why it's thundering and lightning. And I'm insisting on my mum and dad that I go on the horse before we go home. And I'm being walked around these stables on this horse, and it's thundering and lightning. And that's the first holiday that I remember vividly about. But I also know that I did also, Dave, go to the Isle of Man. I mean, I know I've been to the Isle of Man, and that was eventful too, because I had a little motor speedboat, and there was this sort of like little lake place you could put your motor speedboat on, and it was coming towards me, and I leant in to get hold of it, and of course I fell in. And a bloke dived in to save me, and I wasn't that far away from the shore, but he dived in to save me and dragged me out. So I got completely soaking wet. So those two holidays stick in my mind, and the first holiday I went to was Rhyl.
Yeah, my first holiday was Blackpool. I always remember Blackpool. It seemed such a massive, fantastic place. All sorts going on, and going on the beach. And you used to see the elephants come from the circus, cross the road onto the beach, have a bit of a paddle in the pools, and back over to the circus. And the main clown at the circus at the time was Charlie Caroli. And after that, we used to then go down to Newquay. That's where I saw the Sound of Music. But Newquay's beaches were fantastic. Fistral Beach in Newquay near the harbour. Bit of surfing there, on the boards you could hire. You used to lie on them and come in with the waves. But we used to go there every year after that.
Can I ask you a question, Dave?
Absolutely.
On going to the Isle of Man,
yes. Did
you go on the steam packet boat?
Of course.
Okay. And was it a troublesome crossing or a smooth one?
It was okay. I mean, I wasn't seasick, if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
I never felt seasick, but it had a few bumpy bits. But yeah. It rained while we were there as well. I know that it rained a bit.
I can't believe still that it took 4 hours to cross from Liverpool to...
Yeah.
What do they do?
Yeah, that was it. You're thinking, are you going around Ireland and coming in the back way? Is that the idea that what you're doing? Because it's just there. You can see it if you look with the telescope. You see it's just there.
Absolutely.
Where are you going?
But 4 hours to get to the Isle of Man. That would actually have been my first place for a holiday. But prior to that, every weekend we had a caravan at a place called Riverside, which was just outside Southport. And I can remember every weekend we would finish on a Friday and go to Bolton Town Centre, get the 313 bus, a Ribble bus, I can always remember it. Went through many places, got to Preston and then on to Southport, and I think it actually went on to Liverpool after that. But it put us right outside the caravan site, so Mum would pile us all on this pair of furs, I can't even remember how much it were, and we'd have the weekend, lazy weekends in Southport on the caravan site. Just a little ways down the road from where it was, there was a place called Tabby Nook, which has now become Martin Mere, the bird sanctuary. But back in the day, me and my two brothers used to think we were pirates, and we'd find little bits of logs and doors and we'd make rafts out of them. And I always remember there were 2 islands. I think it had been a quarry or something that had been filled in, and they had these 2 islands, and we'd go out there and we'd be, oh, hurrah! You know, we were the pirates of Southport.
No, pirates from Bolton.
Pirates from Bolton. But yeah, many a happy weekend spent there clowning about, and then it just over time started being closed off to the public, and Martin Mere Bird Sanctuary came from there.
Okay, we're going to stop there, everybody, because we've rambled on long enough. Can I just invite you, if you do listen to our podcast, to send us a message. You can find us on the Mama Genesis Facebook page. You'll see a post about the podcast. You can send us a message there, or you can get in touch with us on the Mama website. Tell us what you think. We will be back for another podcast in a few weeks' time. But for now, it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me. Looking forward to more juicy bits next time.
And it's goodbye from them. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Daves talked about films, fashion and firsts. This is a Mama Genesis Tribute Band production.